Take it away.
Presentation just coming.
I'll give you guys a speedy version of this as well. It was supposed to be right at the hoodie, so.
Do you want to start and I'll bring it up shortly? Sorry, Emma.
Pardon?
Would you like to start and I'll just bring up the
Okay, yeah, okay.
PowerPoint?
So first of all, my name is Emma Sherry. I'm the library manager for the Central Otago District Council. I've been here for 6 months. Before that, I was at Gore Council as the library manager for 2 years, and then at Bullock Council for 4 years as the library manager. So I like to move around, but the theme is that I like to stick to smaller councils and more rural areas rather than big city life. It's also because my husband's a police officer and he also likes rural areas. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the library strategy. You might have seen on social media, or maybe if you use our libraries, that we're doing a bit of community engagement at the moment and getting people to give us feedback on the service and what they might like to see moving forward. This has come about because this is part of the long-term plan work that had been set. And when David interviewed me, he indicated that he would like a library strategy. And I thought that sounds something really interesting. I'd love to get my teeth into that. So I'm going to give you some background about libraries. And today when I finish up, I'm going to give you some hard copy surveys and some handouts to take for when you're engaging with your own community. You could ask them to fill out a hard copy survey and they can take it back to the library, or we have a flyer where they can just scan the QR code and do the survey straight there on their phone. That would be great. So I'm not sure how often you use our libraries. When I'm working with elected members and community members, it can be, not at all to sometimes to I'm there every week. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background so that we're all on the same starting point. So we have 4 main libraries across a very large geographical area. And those are Alex, Cromwell, Maniatoto and Roxburgh. We also have community libraries here in Clyde, which is very popular, and Omako and Miller's Flat. We have approximately 20 staff, with only 5 being full-time, and a lot of those 20 staff, that 15 staff who are part-time do some very small hours. So by the time you take into account annual leave, sick leave, having enough people in the building for health and safety purposes, there isn't a lot of meat there. We've got, lots of people, but spread out over 4 main campuses. We deliver a high level of customer service, so we had a 96% satisfaction rate from the residential survey last year. And we offer a range of services, programs, including digital literacy support. So traditionally, you would come up to the front desk and you would just want a book out or return a book. Now it's 50% books, 50% can you help me with the computers? We have free computers in the libraries. Can you help me with my smartphone? Can you help me with the library apps? Can you help me attach this tenancy document to an email so I can rent this house? Can you help me scan this visa document so I can live and work in your country? So it's 50-50 now, and it's really kept the team on their toes. They've had to really keep upskilled. So these are if you look at the PowerPoint up there behind you, these are our stats for 2025. We had 128,657 people through our doors. So that's roughly 5 visits per person in Central Otago. We had 27,330 Wi-Fi logins, and that Wi-Fi is free. It goes 24/7 outside our libraries and inside. So that means that people who live here, who maybe have loved ones overseas and they need to contact their loved ones, can come and hang out outside the library in their car and do FaceTime and things like that. We had 4,581 computer logins in our free computers, and they might be doing anything from filling out a tenancy agreement, sending an email to someone, paying a bill, doing their CV, applying for a job, which then they go on to stay in our community and the money drips down into our community. We had 931 new library members and we had 711 events and activities and 12,896 people attended those. That's on a budget of $5,000. I always have to say that. I have $5,000 for all my events and activities for the whole district. We are savvy. I would like a little bit more than that, so that might come up later at another time, but yeah, the team are great. And we had 180,613 items checked out. Those are physical items. We also have e-content. We don't have exact numbers on that because we share that data with Queenstown Lakes District Council. We can't split it, so it wouldn't be able to say exactly what Central's using. So what I've done is I've tied libraries into your priorities. So Central Otago District Council had a strategic day. We worked on priorities for the council, and libraries really tie into 3 areas of your priorities, which is funding, protection, and attraction. So I'm just going to look briefly how that fits. In regards to funding, we are a high use, low cost service with exceptional return on investment. There's actually a report that was done in 2017 by Victoria Public Libraries that showed for every dollar invested in 2 libraries, returns were $4.30 to the community. And they measured things. It's the biggest piece of research ever done Australasia-wide in this area. And they measured things like direct benefits for library users, like if you use our libraries then you don't have to pay for books, so you save money, or the Wi-Fi. Economic benefits, like applying for a job, getting a job, and that money staying in community. And also measured things like foot traffic around the library. So we attract people to our libraries who then go on to have a cup of coffee, go and have lunch somewhere, go to the supermarket, go to farmlands, do their bits and bobs, and then head out the country. And then community and wellbeing benefits, which include things like improved literacy, life skills, social connection, safe community spaces, and support for early learning and seniors. We are a delivery partner. I like to think of us as a delivery partner rather than a cost centre. We help a range of organisations and services go further because, and one example I want to give you is Skinny Jump. You know the company Skinny, which is the cell phone company. Well, we have Skinny Jump in our libraries, which is provided by Skinny. They give us modems and they're free to give out to the community if they fit a certain criteria, and those are like families with children, job seekers, senior citizens, people with disabilities, refugees and migrant communities, and those who live in social housing. So they get this modem and it's already got 35 gig loaded onto it free, and then they only have to pay $5 a month to top it up. So Skinny Jump wouldn't be able to have the access to community without us, because it's been all public libraries around New Zealand, but we wouldn't be able to afford to do that without them. So that's kind of a way we partner. So yeah, we serve thousands of community members annually for a fraction of operating costs, and we provide universal access. Everybody is welcome in our libraries. We go far for very little. So then we've got protection. Libraries protect community identity and connection as growth accelerates. That's something that we do really well in libraries, especially around identity. We preserve local hit stories. We preserve local knowledge and heritage, and we celebrate and recognise cultures who have moved to the areas. A lovely story I have from Maniatoto is we were contacted by someone who was related to someone who for 60 years has been collecting articles from the newspaper and putting them inside a scrapbook just of their area, their region. and they had been stored at the hospital, and people had been looking at them and they were getting really tatty. So these people arranged the funding to get it all digitized, which is really expensive, and then brought it to us. We catalogued it into our library system, and it all now sits at the Manninga Toto Library, and people can access that. So that's pretty special. And if we move on to attraction, libraries make Central Otago a place people want to stay. So we know that people don't just come for jobs, or they might originally just come for the job, but they stay for the community. And libraries are a part of making Central Otago more livable and not just workable, and quiet, powerful attraction assets. So I'm just going to talk now about the development of the library strategy. So libraries, obviously, we deliver a wide scope of services, but our resources are finite. We have the challenge of the population growth in our libraries and the demand rising, and a changing community, which means demand for our library services are changing. Strategy should be aspirational, and it helps us to decide what we prioritize, how we deliver it, and where investment is most needed. And we're ensuring that our funding is spent effectively in a way that is aligned with the community needs and the council's priorities. And the great thing about doing a strategy with a community service like libraries is that everyone gets to decide. It's not just council staff, it's not just elected members, it's not just council and elected members, it's community, it's mana whenua, it is elected members, and it is council staff. So we all shape the direction. So it's when I presented to the councillors, I had one say, well, everything's going so well, so why do you need a strategy? Just keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, that's a really good point. So I slipped the next slide in to show that we do have some pain points. It's not all rosy, and it's important that we do, look at these things. Our workforce is small, and, we have, so from this community engagement, if we have a lot of people come back and say, well, we want bigger hours for the library, they don't suit us because we commute and we never get to use our library because it's shut at 5 o'clock. And it's only open on Saturday mornings when we have to take our kids to sport. Well, then how will we resource that? Because we don't have enough staff right now to be able to do extra hours. And we also have a rising expectation around digital literacy support. So our team are carrying the same load but with limited resources. So we've also popped in around infrastructure. So our libraries have been put in buildings that aren't really fit for purpose, and that's no one's fault. That's just how it is. Most libraries I had worked in have been put into a building that already existed, and so you've got to work around that. But they are small footprint sizes and they can't really grow. We do have some accessibility issues in some of our buildings. And so there's limited spaces for community to meet and study and things like that. And they are getting very busy. I was in Cromwell in January. Well, I pop in all the time, but January, and everyone was wedged in like this. You couldn't get a spot. It was so busy. And people go, oh, well, that's the tourists. And I was like, but they're allowed to use our service because we go and use their service when we're away. So, and then we've got, around, this one here is around connections. So we've got small teams covering a large geographic area. So we've got opening hours that might not meet the needs of the working community. Some community libraries that we open for those short hours that are not well utilised. And we have rural and isolated areas that I do believe could be underserved at this current time. there's this mindset of you've just got to hop in your car and drive to your library. But if you don't have a car, or you can't afford petrol, or you can't drive, how do you access our services? And last of all is our collections. So our physical collections and our e-audio and e-book demands, they're just going through the roof because community is growing, so demand on these is growing. And we also don't have any funds to diversify our collections for other languages, because we have people living here now that don't necessarily read in English as their first language. So how are we meeting those needs? So those are just some current pain points. I'll probably send that slide to that counsellor so that he can also. So the timeline for our strategy is we kicked off in November last year with an initial planning workshop. We did a research report to ensure library strategies is built on evidence, not assumptions. And I'll email that report out to you because it's actually really good. It's not too taxing, and it's got some links that you can click on from the report. Will take you to resources online. And then we're up to March, April, which is the community and stakeholder consultation. And May and June, we will develop the strategy and then bring it back, you guys. This is just a slide around what other libraries do in this space. So I'll send you out some questions as well for you to think about how you see the library space changing, or you have ideas for your community. But this is just to help you, think, give you some ideas about what others are doing. The things that I'd like the look of is the mobile book fast, but it also has a tech, like it has accessible Wi-Fi. You can get out to the rural areas, but you can also use them in a civil defence emergency, which is what other communities have done. There's some libraries who are doing 24/7 access to libraries, like gyms. If you can go into a gym and use that any time of the day or night, which has got some serious health and safety equipment, then why can't you use a library? And there's 2 libraries in New Zealand who are doing it now, and quite a few over in America. So it started in America and it's coming out to places. And digital lockers are, like where you could have them in rural areas where you were dropping off books and they can just pick them up instead of having to get to the library, and drop them off there as well. And they'll be nice and safe. So there's just a few there. If you guys just want to scan that quickly, and then we'll move to the next slide. So we're on a mission to collect 100 great ideas. Let's shape the future of Central Otago libraries. It's been a lot of fun, but people have really enjoyed it, and so have the children. We have Alex schools come into our libraries to use them, and it's been, we get the classrooms and we've been asking them, and one of the children said to a colleague of mine, "Oh, so exciting getting to tell the library my idea." And I thought, well, isn't that great that they're participating and they feel heard? So yes, 100 great ideas. We're in community engagement. We've done a Let's Talk survey. So that's can be done online or hard copy. We have these interactive idea boards in the library, which people really like to take part in, and they also like to just stand there and read them as well. In fact, me and Vicky, from the team lead from Cromwell Library, are about to go and hit the main street. Paper Plus has said, yep, stand up, upside up, and we want to hear from non-users, not just library users. So roaming boards at meetings and on the streets. And we've also been connecting with groups like youth, schools, senior citizens, newcomers, rural organisations, and that has been really meaningful, those conversations, those one-to-one conversations. And we completed an engagement with library staff and wider council as well. One of the interesting conversations we had recently was from a group of work from home. So these people work from home, and they come and use our library spaces to work in the libraries, and then once again they go off down to the cafe to have lunch, and they go and do their shopping and things like that. And I had looked for some stats, and we have from the 2023 census, 22.7% of Central Otago people work from home, and that's 5% higher than the national average. So there is quite a group there. And that's it. That's me. I'm going to do a few things. Before I leave, I'm going to give you surveys and handouts. And tomorrow I will follow up with an email with the report, link to the survey as well, and some questions for you to answer if we have time. And now I'm here for questions and answers, to give you some answers.
Well, yes. This will be an explanation for me. I'm not that okay with libraries. I have been in the past, but digital literacy. What is that? That's
Yeah, because that's like, so digital literacy is being able to use equipment. So digital literacy is understanding how to use a computer, the basics of a computer. Well, digital literacy as wide as you want to go. Cell phones, apps.
So you're teaching people how to use computers, and is that part of your job?
Yes, good question.
It's
Not only that, they're also advising the community on cyber safety, scam awareness, phishing.
Yeah, that's what next question's coming along that line.
Yeah.
Like,
So I guess you could say, is that part of your job? And my question would be, when did we decide literacy books and digital literacy, like that, it's the same thing.
well, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And we have evolved because that's what the community has asked us to do. And they are coming in their droves to say, hey, we need to understand, and we're a community service, so we're driven by what's coming through our door. So, yeah.
And the advantage, I guess, when you compare that with the REAP courses, because REAP run
Yeah.
adult literacy courses,
Yeah.
but this is
We
actually,
don't run.
this is on my
both.
time, this is on my time, I can do it with you guys,
Sorry,
whereas
no.
I've got to commit more formal time.
We don't run those same courses as
No,
well.
no.
We don't believe in clashing.
No.
We believe in working together.
Yeah, well,
But there are things like we provide 3 library apps. Therefore, we need to be able to show customers how to use those library apps so that they can access all the resources that the libraries have to offer.
This is sometimes to people who don't know what an app is. So like the libraries are such an essential provider of a Q&A.
Yeah, it is mostly older people, I have to say, and we do care about them. And also we know that people's lives, and I know someone's going to disagree with me and say, oh, but social media, like people's lives are better if they are more digitally able. They can do more things for themselves, and that has an impact on their well-being. So there is a benefit for us to help those people, and you know, it could take anything from 5 to 10 minutes, depending what it is. And one of the things that I started up in Gore, which we will be starting up here, is called Gen Connect. And that is when we get a bunch of teenager volunteers to come to the library on a Monday afternoon, and they're available for the senior citizens to come, and they help each other. So we're just providing the space and a little bit of training and keeping an eye and making sure everyone's safe. But it's great, and it works 2 ways, because the senior citizens end up having these kind of interactions with young people that they might not normally have, and the young people get volunteer opportunities. So
I think
That's a good.
you forget that because we all operate in the digital space all the time, and it's been around for so long now, there are still quite a few older people, especially, who just don't do it, and they're like, I nearly did. Why would I bother getting an email address? But we had a go, our neighbour used to, he didn't have an email address, and every time something came out from our irrigation company, it was, could you also pop next door and tell your neighbour, because he doesn't have an email address that we can send anything to, so.
There's a power.
Father used to say to me, oh, you know, can you look up something on that Google box thing? You know, like, tell me what.
Yeah, there's a power company that's only going to be administrating bills through emails. I think that happened recently, actually, before I got here, and then
Say that again, sorry.
there's a
There's a
power
couple of
company
them.
Yeah,
that
there's
only
yeah.
bills out through emails.
Thanks.
But.
So then we got an influx.
Most companies do.
So then we got an influx at the library saying, can you help us set up an email account? We don't know how to do that. Yeah.
I'm interested in what you were saying about, you know, how much you do on such a limited budget. When I compare that to some of the operational budgets of other groups in the community, and your return there far exceeds $4.30. It would probably be 4 or 5 times that. What would the goals be with additional funding for your events? I know that they're, you know, remarkable. What are the goals there?
Yeah, I'd have to think about that. It would be around the richness and of what at the moment, for an example, what I can say what it makes up of is our people are our only assets.
Yeah.
Right. So they need to be there and available, and sometimes have some good hobbies of their own that they can like teach others and put on, you know. Books. Our books are our major asset, and then obviously our authors that travel around the community. But you know, our summer reading program is half of our budget.
Mhm.
So the one thing that we do put on for the kids takes up half of that budget, so it leaves very little for anything else.
It's in the school holidays.
Yeah, over Christmas, summer. So to stop the slide, the reading, is what happens when kids aren't at school. They tend to stop reading in the summer. So the whole idea is that a long time ago, libraries partners with schools to keep that momentum going. And they here at this library, they read over the summer, they come back in and show what they've done, and they get to choose a book. But every library is different in how they run their summer reading program.
Do you have a bit of a read on, because I see your jigsaw table there, do you have a read on kind of how that is being used, or the frequency? Go to the other end where there's people reading newspapers, or have you got a kind of sense of with growth numbers on those they're pretty low cost touch points for you, aren't they?
I can't honestly say that we do. We know that, for example, one of the councillors asked me how many people have cards, you know, that, and I said, well, we call them active users in libraries, because you have to have swiped your card within the last 24 months to be an active user.
Oh.
But that doesn't account for the guy who walks past every day and reads the newspaper because he didn't swipe his card. Will come in and do the puzzle. So that's harder for us to track.
I think that the safe space that a library provides is becoming such an important community connector. And I think that you do a wonderful job. And I'm fiercely disappointed about how much money we give you.
Oh, it's nice to hear that.
And I guess in your strategy, the high user, low cost, I mean, 931 new card members at $5 doubles your event budget.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the part of your strategy, is thinking a bit about your event.
People dropping off the other end though, as well.
Yeah, that doesn't cost, we don't charge them to exit, we only charge them to enter.
No.
It's a good idea.
No, it's fine.
Order picture.
That is fine. I'm used to working with many different.
Well, I'm just looking at my own circumstances.
Yeah.
Right? So this is my circumstance. So I've got 3 young adult boys, and so when they were at primary school, they were users of the library for obvious reasons, you know, right through to primary school they were using just for projects, and mainly for projects and things like that. They're not avid readers, but it was fun to do. Then when they went to high school, I don't think they've been back in the library, so.
Yeah, are there,
So they get all their information of.
Yeah.
Of their phones, they're avid users, so we're not really engaging those people.
Yeah.
And then.
They also have a high school library though, Jim, and then that's part of
Yes,
their
yes.
English class too, so
Yeah.
it's a difficult puzzle to get a real read on, because our expectation in New Zealand is that our teens do engage with the library as part of their secondary schooling, and that is like part of the curriculum is visits to the library, which then leads to them not visiting this one as much. So it's not that they're not engaging with libraries, they're just doing it in a different way.
Well, differently, yes, yeah, that's sort of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Well, so, and then we're into what now I've got mates that are my age, that I presume they don't go to the library either because they've got ebooks.
Yeah.
So how, you know, like
yeah, I can answer that.
where we
Yeah.
placed with
Yeah.
the ebooks, you know, like, are we, what are we, you know, like.
I can definitely answer that. So in regards to the youth,
Yeah.
they are hard to tap into. I've been doing it since I've arrived in libraries, trying to find out how we bring them back into our libraries. And first of all, you've got to go and ask them what you want, and that is this piece of work. So at the moment, I'm trying to organise morning tea drop-ins at their libraries at high school to entice them in to say, hey, what do you guys want? You know, so they can tell us what they want. The second thing is our libraries here in Central are probably not the most enticing for young adults. You think of the city ones where they've got maker spaces and they've got you know, breakout rooms where they can have board game nights and stuff like that. That is what entices youth. So in War, we started up a board gaming night because we had a late night from 5 till 8 o'clock. And we had Dungeons and Dragons and things, and that pulled them in because it's a safe space and they're not at someone's house, so they feel like they've got some independence. So that's in regards to youth. The youth will come back when they become parents and they've got children and they need free books.
It does also provide some employment opportunities. So we have young people who work at the library,
Yeah.
as their after-school job.
Yeah.
And one of our friends' daughters.
Staff is sort of. You
No,
know,
I wouldn't include them. They're just doing like to school. And then in regards to yourself with the ebooks, we have ebooks and audio books. So you can have those for free if you come to my library
Okay.
instead of paying for them. And that might mean if you're a retiree that your retirement money's going to go a little bit further that way. You're not having to pay.
It's something we don't promote
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, no, it is a really tricky one because it uses an app.
Yeah.
Like this Libby or Borrow box that they
Everybody
use to get
with
the.
it.
And yeah, she can help sort it out.
Oh, I think I've got the app sorted, but.
But the other thing is, some people say, oh, I don't need a library and I'll never need a library. I've worked with a counsellor like that before. And then his wife needed the library because she was unwell and we were providing a program for that group of people with that condition. And he was bringing her in every week. And then he said, oh my goodness, I can't believe all the things that you do to help in this library. So I think people sometimes say, I don't need the library until they need the library.
It's sort of a life cycle thing of using libraries, isn't it? You use them when you're little and then you use them when you're older and,
Yeah.
you know.
It's,
I know, Jim, I'm a library user and I'm only in my 40s, so.
I've done.
I read as well, but you don't.
Not from the library.
No, you don't. So,
And you use it for different things. Like I've used the library quite a few times, especially when we were living at Shadow Creek, when you come in and you've got time to fill before a meeting and you need the Wi-Fi to be reading your resolutions or something. You know, it could be, I mean, you could possibly pop along to Justine's work, but if she says, no, you're not allowed here, Jim, you could go to the library to do your emailing or.
I know,
very close.
I was holidaying down there in a caravan near Tiana with no
Oh, yeah.
Wi-Fi, and
Yeah.
I needed to jump online to do a submission for council
Yeah.
by a certain date, and I
Yeah.
went into the Tiana library and they had a room that was just set up with workstations and the Wi-Fi, and there was lots of people going in there. I thought it was actually a really good
Yeah.
setup because I thought I'll just shoot into the library and jump on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's Or you get exercise as well, don't go to the gym.
To your first question, I just double check the economic data report for our stats, and at the moment, 23% of our population are over 65. But in about 25 years, we estimate that to be 1 in 3 or 31%. So we'll be really in that
Increase.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with how they do,
That's
to be
great.
honest. I'm a bit of an eye on it.
And if you ever want to just have a wee tour or anything, just email me.
I was there recently being a community board member checking it out,
Cool.
knowing that this was coming up. So.
So the good thing is you can email us all, we will have your
Yes.
email address, we
Yes.
can do the Let's Talk
Yes.
survey, we can throw stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing has been our cutting your lunch by 50%. So is 25 minutes, half hour good enough for you?
Yeah, we could probably do it a lot quicker unless you have a lot of questions.
Well, well, I want to get a measure on that before I turn this off, that's all, because we want the good stuff going back and forward.
Do you want us to try to do it in 10 minutes and then leave you free?
No, why don't we keep rolling for another 10 minutes then, and then that gives you 20 minutes.
No.
Yep,
Emma
you're
needs
done.
to get to the play innovation thing as well.
Okay.
Thanks so much. It was lovely to meet you.
Good job, yeah.
Thanks, Emma, yeah, excellent, yeah.
Very passionate about what I do.
We picked that up.
We get that feeling, so.
Okay.
Try and move.
So the community leasing and licensing policy, which
Sorry.
after this update, it should be the leasing and licensing policy, is roughly about 7 years old now. I started 6 years ago this Easter, and I did the 1 year review as the first task when I came in of a new system that had been put in place by my predecessor. And I also did the 3-year review. Both of those reviews were focused on local board feedback of the implementation of the policy. So that's the main guidance we've used to date, which is why this one we're going to go back to some targeted engagement with our user groups just to make sure we're still on the right track. At that stage, we were looking to add some transparency and fairness around the process for community leases, and we didn't have anything in the policy around commercial leases. Now that we have the statutory policy team on board, they've added those commercial elements and tidied up some of the community elements. It is largely changes at our end that shouldn't impact the community, and we've tried to be really specific in the documents sent out to you where they will. There are 2 or 3 key areas we've clarified. The way we charge community groups is based on a percentage of their profit. We have clarified that that profit will include alcohol sales, and that wasn't clear in the policy before. The Incorporated Societies Act is now in force, which means they do need to be an incorporated society or affiliated with one, which is the other big change. We do also have 8 slides here on the commercial elements, so I'll just run through those at a really high level, and then we'll take any of your questions.
Yes, so like Alex is saying, basically the name of the policy is changing to include commercial leases as well, because it wasn't guidelines. When I started just over a year ago, it was quite hard to, as a new person, interpreting the policy and applying it to the leases. We've got quite a backlog to work through. So hence we've been using this opportunity to look at those things that's becoming an issue, and commercial leases was one of them. Just having a bit more guidance on that. What we've also done in the policy is strengthen the decision making or give it more transparency. It's really just putting on paper what has happened in practice. So we're still bringing all the new leases and complete renewal of a lease to the boards and the council. It's only when you've made a decision on a lease for a certain term on certain conditions, and all we're doing in-house as staff under delegation is just implementing what's already been decided. So that's that right of renewal or the rent review that's coming up. We don't necessarily think it's very proactive to bring it to council every time. So those are the things we're basically doing within the boundaries of the policy, and the decision you made initially with the lease, we just putting that out a bit more.
I believe the next slide is a duplicate, sorry, so go one more.
Yeah, so that's just basically stating exactly what we're doing at the moment. So it's commercial, community leases is usually a 15 plus 15 years, with a 5-year rent reviews. The community lease, community licenses is shorter period because the whole purpose of a license is it's not exclusive use, it's only part of a property, and normally they're shorter.
That's a good point. So lease is the exclusive use of the whole space and license is part.
The commercial leases, because of their nature, we don't want them to be necessarily too long, so we're making them 5 plus 5 years. Although we have got ones where, because there's so much infrastructure, like our Speedway one is the recent one on endowment land, was actually a longer lease. It's a 21-year lease that they approved. So yeah, but we're also giving ourselves that flexibility to when we present the leases for approval, that we could in some cases have longer leases, and that's also corporate.
Any idea what are the numbers roughly within Kiwi? Have we got 10, 15, 100 in each of the categories? What have we got?
We've actually got a lot all over the spectrum. Most of our leases are very long leases, especially on reserves. We've got your golf clubs have got 30. You can only have 33 up to 33 years in terms of the Reserves Act, and most of them have got about 30-year leases. Yeah, some of which none of them expiring. I've actually done a bit of work on the golf clubs because I'm expecting that to be a bit of a pushback, because I believe that was pushback before because they make quite a lot of money on their bar sales.
Yeah.
And there is actually the likes of the Roxburgh Golf Club that's least currently excludes bar sales.
Right.
Specifically.
Don't know the quantums, but they'll be a lot larger than you think because there's also things like when you buy a piece of property and things like that that are grazed, so they'll be higher than you think.
Yeah, I'm starting to think it's big numbers.
Yeah, I'm actually working on now. We've moved from a spreadsheet that I have to go with of how our leases were managed to a lease management system, and then we can start doing reporting out of that. So I'm hoping in the next year, we're just trying to catch up. To bring a report to council and boards to show you exactly what type of, how many numbers of leases you've got in your areas, what they look like, what they,
And we do have scope, if you look at that community leases, that looks like it locks land in for up to 30 years, but we have scope if we need to develop the land for another purpose to change the lease or to cancel the lease. And we've put in some quite fair terms for the leaseholder and what that looks like. And we had a recent example where someone had 6 months to leave the property and that was just too tight for them. So we're looking more at that 12-month period.
So that's what was raised today by the
yes,
museum,
yeah, I was coming to that, is that a clause that's our clause for us. We haven't been putting that in previous years, but as our community grows, as things change, it's actually become quite apparent that we do need that. So we can't be locked in for a long period if we actually do, 30 years is a long period and things change. So especially in the Cromwell area where land's become quite
The golf course is quite valuable. So.
We have started putting those clauses into, or when we know that we are going to develop that property, we put the 6 months, but quite right, 6 months appears to be too short, depending on the infrastructure that they invest in. Obviously, with the Speedway one again, the board decided and council to give them a 7-year out the cancellation clause.
Right.
It's sort of similar to the term, so you don't, although they've got a right of renewal. I think they can probably move on. Not sure.
Next up is rent calculations, which is largely covered for community. It's that 2.5% of income less affiliation fees. If you don't have an income, you are charged a peppercorn rent, which means we legally have to charge you $1, which we can waive.
What we found with why we're starting to go just on this route was the interpretation. Fees plus subscriptions minus affiliation fees equals 2.5% of the last 5 years. That was basically how it worked. And the interpretation of staff as they work through these financial sheets seem to have been different. So we just want to, and also like I said, the sell-off liquor was another thing that didn't seem to be fair, comparing the other clubs that's not necessarily bringing that income in. But I'm finding the 2.5% on income, less affiliation fees and more, and obviously less grants, donations and fundraising. is a more fair outcome for most clubs. And because if the income's low, the rent's going to be low. If the income's high, that will reflect in the rent.
So is it just on income? Is it income, like if they've got expenses, like if it's an activity that has a high electricity cost, for example, to operate, how do you take into account? Because their income has to meet their expenses. Is it, how do you manage that?
We're going on growth because of the Speedway example.
Yeah, but it's more commercial, isn't it?
Yeah,
You think about a community activity.
The bowling club is like water use.
Yeah, well, a bowling club would be an example.
No, actually, sorry, yeah, that is true. We have in the community lease, so we have actually taken those things into account where they're paying for the rent, the rates of the property. We've got a toy library in Alexandra that's paying a high amount of rates.
Yeah.
And their lease was $500 a year, which they couldn't afford. They came back to council. So that's one of the things we pulled into the policy as well, sorry, with community leases, is to try and say that if they're actually paying the rates, they're looking after the land, they haven't got hardly any income, we'll go to a $1 if demanded.
Because income on its own is not necessarily a reflection of the cost of running that group, is it? Like say the rugby club at this stadium, for example, if they've got high costs of looking after the, who's paying for the grounds or whatever. Council doesn't.
So do you have a rates calculation for community groups as well, or is it just market rates? Because I was on the toy library committee when they were having the conversation.
Paying the rates normally, most of your leases say the full 100% of the rates on their property.
Yeah.
In some cases, we actually just take the bit that they because a lot of them are on the reserves, which sometimes is non-rateable anyway. But if they are rateable, we're only taking that a percentage of their usage of that particular land. So they're not paying the full.
But to clarify, is the feedback you want us to give to council on this portion that you would prefer that we take expenses out and calculate out of the profit?
Well, I think it's up to the board members. I'm just raising it, but there's more to consider. I'm just thinking of looking at balance sheet. You can look at profit and you can look at net profit and gross profit. If you look at income doesn't mean much unless you look at expenditure usually. Like income, well, council could look amazing, couldn't it?
Yeah.
But we have a lot of expense too.
It's such a variable beast you're trying to manage, isn't it?
And it changes.
And it's hard because some of them it's community land that is then for the exclusive use of those people, and the rest of the community don't get to use it.
100%.
So it's a really difficult.
The problem you have is that golf course is actually the leases are community leases, not commercial leases. And if your rules are for a small community group different from you start running into that issue, I think probably the best we can do is present every case on the case and take into consideration the extra cost that the clubs have.
That's always by exception, isn't it? We'll just manage it by exception.
So do you have that discretion? They'll have that discretion to alter it from 2.5% to.
We don't have that, but the board would have that when we present the.
We will manage by exception.
By exception,
because we can't have a rule that's going to be effective across such a varied budget.
You'd need to write it down in a way that enables that exception to occur, because sometimes we say, well, what's the policy? And we have to abide by the policy. So just from my experience in working at council, sometimes you can back yourself into a corner unintentionally with these things.
Well, that's where this question is coming from. So the example you've given is say a community group that has high water use in a circumstance in the future where we're in a drought situation, and Julie said let's restrict water use across the district because we need to save it. Would we still be making a discount on high water use for people using our facilities?
Well, the volume of argument is that they're now using treated water to flood their green every 3
But we have that everywhere. So Goldfields Primary School has the same problem. They have to choose between watering their land and the idea of that was always we shouldn't be treating water to drink and then pouring it on the ground.
No.
We should be looking for alternatives.
And they are.
I'll take this away until I show.
So I guess the other thing that we did do in this policy was give the ability to go to $1 if demanded which weren't there in the old policy, tried to move away from that. But since that policy, there's been a lot of times when the council overruled that and said, due to the circumstance of this club, we're going back to $1 bit. And it wasn't in the policy. So that's why we started putting that in, so it still gives that ability to do that.
Yeah,
And so
that's what we
in
need.
terms of license, would you like us to continue? We're right at your 20 minutes.
Sorry?
We've got 2 slides left. Would you like
Right.
us to continue? We're at your-
Get it,
Let's go.
Let's jump to risk maintenance and health and safety.
These are just issues we've had with the old leases and trying to be a bit more clear on health and safety requirements. The subleasing and if you're doing alteration rules to get council permission once you do the Clyde Bowling Club, for example, they're planning this 900,000 changes to the club rooms, but we've not been told about it until now. And really, it is on a reserve, so we do need council permission or minister's consent for that. So that's all that sort of trying to clarify those things. And we're just being a bit more clear on the maintenance responsibilities. We're finding a lot of times the taps leaking or the sinks stinking or something, and we get calls on that, and who pays for it. That's just being a bit more clear on those. And the issue that has come up recently was the $5 million public liability insurance for some of our community groups. It is quite, it seems to be quite high, but we keep being told that it's not so expensive. But
No, it's not.
so that is a requirement that we've got as well.
And the difference between 1 million and 5 million is probably nothing.
Oh, I think it was like $18.
It's a cheap anyway.
The public liability insurance, yeah, especially for not-for-profits, you've got some dedicated insurance providers that do that for not-for-profits.
I think the other thing with insurance, the perception was because we've got public liability insurance on council land, that covers your lessee, and it doesn't.
No.
So just making those things clear. So yeah.
Our last slide is our governance and transparency changes, just really clarifying our record keeping and the new delegations table that Zelda clarified earlier, that the staff will take responsibility for the renewal and those quite obvious decisions. But anything, our initial wording was controversial, but it really is more where there are community interests to be balanced, remains the community board.
It's why I wanted it in the policy myself, was when I started, I couldn't work out what was I meant to take to council and what could we just process. And there was discrepancies on opinion, so we just, through delegations and all these things, we've clarified that in the policy now.
And we've just clarified some of that criteria and noted how the records will be kept when those exceptions are used. I don't really have anything else on the list. We're happy to take questions, but just to clarify for you, we take away that income versus profit question. Are you all happy if we work with Julie on that, and then it will come up to table?
It's nice, they're the board, I was just saying.
Yeah.
I like that you've got noted in there the opportunity for exceptions. And I think that would be good to have noted with the exception that as a potential basis rather than being a formula always.
That would, I really like when there's that level of clarity and see, so.
And it's where that delegation for exception sits, I suppose, isn't it? With dollar threshold.
Which will not be one.
Probably more just on community groups for us and commercial.
It will always come to council as a first decision on what the terms of the lease is going to be. And it's only for us to implement afterwards, and we can't, if you've said 2.5% on then that's what we do. Unless we have to come back to say they can't afford it, you need to change the lease.
That's really helpful, thank you.
Yeah. So what else were you going to tell us when you had an hour's window that you've done it?
We never knew what Jim would throw at us, and here it goes.
I have. Now, you've incorporated societies.
Yes.
So that's so you want sports clubs to be able to lease something, have to become an incorporated society.
Or affiliated with an umbrella group,
Or what?
which is an incorporated society who will take the lease for them. I believe is my
Within another group.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's because
So-
we changed the legislation. It's not our choice.
Do we have any sports clubs that aren't incorporated societies
Yes,
that lease. So they will have to become incorporated societies.
yes, and we're actively working with all and
We're
current leases in that situation.
I've recently done our communication to all these groups that don't qualify. They have to, we can actually look obviously if they're registered or not. There's additional requirement now in the 2022 Corporate Societies Act that says you've got to re-register. So the old clubs that used to be registered under 1908 can't be registered, so they have to go through this whole process. And the deadline's of April 26th of April this year.
And
So
they've done so much work on that, Jim, just letting people know about those changes. It's been like 3 years in the making, like to let people know about those changes. Yeah. Yeah.
We really resistant to it because we've got so many small community groups, so it's quite a burden.
Yeah, so my concern is lump regulations onto Joe blogs, volunteers that, gosh, we've got to incorporate our sports club now.
Especially from
They
a
are, you know.
liability.
And then they'll end up folding because nobody will want to be able to do it. You know,
You need 20, when you 10 or, depending on your constitution, you need 10 or 20 members at a special general meeting to sign it off.
Yeah.
That's the biggest hurdle. The document season.
Sometimes they haven't even got that many members, so.
they can be individuals, but that just puts all the liability on them. So you can enter into a contract with an individual.
Okay, yep.
So that's a government requirement that they all
Re-register. If you're a corporate society, you must re-register.
re-register.
But
The people that aren't in,
But then they just can't hold the lease with these guys, so they could still operate if they don't hold a lease.
You can't enter into a legal agreement.
yeah, I understand that. So, but there is clubs that, there's the clubs that don't have a lease that use their premises.
Yes. And the general solution is that they work with a legal entity who does have that number of members and they work together.
Well, we're trying to get them all to go in corporate societies. There's other ways around it, but obviously we're not going to kick a club off the grounds if they're still in the process, because I don't think all of them are going to meet the deadline. But we will be lenient. We won't be saying to a club, look, you're not registered 30th April.
Well, that is my concern.
Yeah.
That's where I'm getting at, is that we still all of a sudden, you know, they fold up because they can't.
The reality is
They've been sent letters.
Yes, I know.
The government effectively outlining the process and.
But not people that aren't incorporated, though. They won't have received any information.
They would have been, so the organisations that support groups like that have been sending information out for 3 years. So does that make any sense?
Well, I've personally emailed to clubs that aren't registered.
I'm thinking kind of, are we getting confused between that and the likes of the Open Bridge Club who uses the hall, but we didn't know about until we went to close it and they said, oh, we use this every second day. Is it kind of, so I don't know what sort of relationship they have. Do they book their facilities? Because a lot of those groups haven't booked facilities. Yeah, so maybe, I don't know what.
But that's a bit different when they're just using the booking system.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is kind of, maybe they don't have a formal lease, those.
Just like.
They don't come in the same shape.
Now, no, I'm saying now.
Yeah, and then the Toy Library, luckily, of course, there's a Toy Library Association in New Zealand that they can be affiliated under. But I guess if I wanted a Tiddlywinks club, then I'd have to go down to, I don't know, the RSA club and ask if I can have my Tiddlywinks club there rather than entering into a lease with you to use somewhere else. Right?
Would you want to enter a lease if it's a Tiddlywinks club? Or
it's an incredibly profitable Tiddlywinks. Fine.
Sort of what I'm getting at is that small insignificant.
Yes.
That, you know, we're not, I just don't want to cut off.
No, that's what I'm saying.
And so long as they're not entering into a lease,
That's
that's fine. If they are just like hiring the rugby club from the council, you know, filling out our booking form online and paying them money, that's
so
fine.
they can't lease in, they have to sublease. Go with another.
Hire.
Or just be a casual user or a hire.
There's quite a few people do that too.
There's quite a low number of our lessees at the moment that would not be incorporated at all.
Because if words. If you were like a really small group, then you wouldn't want to have a lot of legal obligations, right? So then the ones that want to enter into a legal lease obligation are going to have a different structure to those more informal or smaller groups.
You wouldn't want to have the financial liability of a lease if you were big
We're small.
Yeah, I mean, you think.
to be able to manage that risk.
As a board, you might not choose to lease entirely on waters and Tiddlywinks Club. They're more likely to make.
What's the Tiddlywinks of front door?
I think that's the next person here.
It's all under here. They're not, are they?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.